The NFL draft is this Thursday, but before we get to that, I have to give you guys my final mock draft. Remember, this mock draft is predictive. It is what I think is going to happen, not what I would do with the pick. If you want to see some more analysis like that, check out the quarterback and running back rankings that I already put on the channel. The wide receiver rankings drops this Thursday, but without further ado, let's hop into today's mock draft. All right, so the Tennessee Titans on the clock, and I think at this point in time, everybody knows who they're going with. Cam Ward went on his Fortnite stream, said Calvin Ridley's the best wide receiver in all of football, Tony Pollard's the best running back in all of football. So yeah, if you need any more proof that Cam Ward is going to be a Tennessee Titan, I don't know what to tell you, okay? Cam Ward's going to go to Tennessee, he's going to be productive, and he's going to give them a shot to win that division, compete for the playoffs immediately. The Cleveland Browns on the clock, Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter feels like the pick here. They've kind of been leaning that way. They're going to play him on both sides of the ball. I think they're primarily going to use Travis Hunter as an offensive piece. That's what I would do at least. I would have him mainly be my wide receiver, maybe give him a couple nickel packages, maybe some red zone looks. Travis Hunter pretty much said that, I'm going to be playing on both sides of the football. Cleveland, like, you want to draft me, you're going to have to play me on both sides of the ball. And I think Cleveland does. And then Abdul Carter. I think this top three is pretty much a lock, right? Abdul Carter, a top two talent in the draft, in my estimation, an edge rusher. Does he kind of make Kayvon Thibodeau a bit redundant? Yeah. Can you just move off of Thibodeau? Absolutely. Abdul Carter, Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, Bobby Okereke, like the front seven for the New York Giants is absolutely lethal with Abdul Carter. The guy gets Micah Parsons comparisons for obvious reasons. Speed rusher, Penn State, similar build, but if you're the Giants, it's a no-brainer pick. This is where the NFL draft begins to get interesting in my estimation, because there's a lot of different spots the Patriots could go here at 4. Certainly a trade back candidate. I think the Saints maybe could move up and take Shedeur Sanders. But we're going to have the Patriots stick and pick here. Genty, that's a name I look at. Blue chip prospect. Your running back room is Ramondre Stevenson, who has a bit of a fumbling issue. Antonio Gibson, who's not the strongest back out there. Terrell McMillan. You have Stephon Diggs, but is that really a long-term solution? Outside of him, you have Booty, Polk, Demario Douglas, a bunch of question marks. Mason Graham, do you pair him next to a Milton Williams? Where are you at on Christian Barmore and the blood clots? Are you sure that this guy is good to go? I would highly consider all three of these guys if I was New England. But at the end of the day, I think they go Will Campbell. I think that Will Campbell won the versatility on the offensive line. The guy that could play tackle or play guard. I think he'd be better at guard, but I think the Patriots could use a tackle at this point in time. And I think Will Campbell will be fine and serviceable at tackle. I know the short arms, whatever you heard, it is what it is. But I think priority one is protecting Drake May. I think you brought in Stephon Diggs as kind of a band-aid for the wide receiver situation. There's guys that you could draft later in the draft too. I think it's a deeper wide receiver class than people give it credit for. But Will Campbell, I believe he's now minus 2,000 as well on betting sites to be picked number 4. So sometimes you just got to kind of follow where the money is. The Jacksonville Jaguars on the clock, again, similar to New England. I'd consider Genty. Travis Etienne's on the last year of his deal. Do you pick up the 5th-year option? Do you not pick it up? Tanks Bigsby, what has he shown you that, you have faith that he could be the guy? I don't know. You have Liam Cohen running his offense. We saw how big Bucky Irving was in that last year. A running back like Ashton Genty would fit very, very well. Terrell McMillan paired with Brian Thomas Jr. creates one of the more exciting young wide receiver cores in all of football. But ultimately, I think they go Mason Graham. The way that they've been talking about this as well, it just has screamed defensive line to me. They want an impact maker on that defensive line. The defense was absolutely dreadful last year, both against the pass and the run. I think they need to spend a couple of picks this year on the defensive line and the defense specifically. You brought in De'Ami Brown to kind of fill that wide receiver 2 role. You do have Etienne and Bigsby still, which is serviceable enough at running back. You bring in Liam Cohen to get the best out of these guys offensively, and you got to start drafting talent on the defensive side of the football. The Raiders here, I think you just walk the pick in of Ashton Jeanty. If he's on the board, I don't see why Pete Carroll doesn't make this pick. I don't see why the Raiders don't make this pick. You know, the Raiders, obviously it's a team that we all kind of viewed going into this offseason as far away, but the moves that they have made have kind of screamed that they want to compete for the playoffs now. Geno Smith brought in, you bring in Pete Carroll to be the head coach of the team. You have Brock Bowers, you have Jacoby Myers on that offense, but you don't have a real running back. You haven't replaced Josh Jacobs yet. You had a lot of just question marks last year. It was Madison and Zamir White and some other backs that were getting run there. I think you bring in Ashton Jeanty to be an absolute workhorse. You pair him with Geno Smith, and those guys, it's a really solid offense at that point in time. You got to work on the defense a little bit, but you already have a pretty strong defensive line in Max Crosby, Christian Wilkins. So the Raiders bring in Jeanty as they look to compete for the playoffs in 2025. The New York Jets, it's not a flashy pick, but Armand Membu, I think that they want to secure their tackles for the future. They already have Olu Fashanu to play left tackle. You bring in Membu to play right tackle. That's where he's best at. So to me, that is one of those, this is the pick here for the Jets. And do you consider a Tyler Warren? Maybe, but I just don't think that the Jets are ready to take a flashy pick. I don't think the Jets are in a position to spend on tight end. I think it's, I've used this analogy before, but you set the foundation for the house before you build the rest. Tyler Warren feels like the nice marble kitchen with the island in the middle. The Jets don't have the foundation for the house yet. So you bring in Armand Membu, whether Justin Fields works out or not, you have your tackles for the future. The Carolina Panthers, pretty much everybody has had them mocked and taking Jalen Walker, and I've done that the first 2 mock drafts. I'm switching it up here. The more I've thought about it, the more I think the Carolina Panthers should take Ted McMillan here. If Ted McMillan is on the clock at pick 8, this is a guy who I think has Pro Bowl, all pro level ceiling in the NFL. And Bryce Young showed a lot last year. And Dave Canales got the most out of him. And Ted McMillan's comp is a Mike Evans that is shiftier. Well, Dave Canales worked in an offense with a Mike Evans. And Dave Canales has gotten the best out of Bryce Young. And Dave Canales is an offensive-minded head coach. And typically, the head coach kind of gets his way with the early draft picks. And while I think Jalen Walker's good, there are some question marks there. Ted McMillan is an absolute stud. 6'4", 4.4 speed. The guy is an absolute beast. And it's Adam Thielen, it's Xavier Legette, it's question mark, Jatavion Sanders. There's a lot of question marks. And Ted McMillan gives you a true alpha wide receiver in this room. I know they spent a first round pick on Legette last year, but it doesn't hurt to do it again. Not when a guy like Ted McMillan makes it to you. Pick 9. I've done this a couple times now. I just kind of see it as the landing spot for Shedeur Sanders to New Orleans. I think that the Saints need a quarterback. You've heard all the rumors of Derek Carr kind of wanting out. What does that stem from? Probably being told he's not going to be the starter anymore because Shedeur Sanders is going to be a New Orleans Saint. You pair him with Kamara, you pair him with Olave, you pair him with Shaheed, Jawan Johnson, Taysom Hill in a dome, a decent offensive line. They have Talise Fuaga on that line now. So Kellen Moore's the head coach, an offensive-minded head coach. You brought him in. You let him pick his quarterback. They develop and grow together. That would be successful for New Orleans. The defense is full of veterans, and they're ready to produce now. And in the NFC South, I think every team going into the year feels like that they can compete. And if Shedeur is a hit, similar to a way, you could say similar to a way that Jaden Daniels was a hit, but I'll just say similar to a way that Bo Nix was a hit. If Shedeur Sanders hits similar to Bo Nix, why not the Saints? Veteran defense, decent weapons. If they had a solid quarterback with Kellen Moore now at head coach, they could compete immediately. And I think Shedeur is a fine player for the NFL. I don't think he's ever going to eclipse, top 8 quarterback in football, but could I see him in that top 12 to 16 range at his peak? Absolutely. And for New Orleans, I think that's all they need right now. The Chicago Bears are on the clock. Bears fans, you're going to be mad at me. Some of you. I think Omarion Hampton is where this team goes here. You could tell me Mike Green, you could tell me Walter Nolan, you could tell me Tyler Warren. At the end of the day, and Tyler Warren, I give some real consideration to. To me, this pick is Omarion Hampton or Tyler Warren. They need running back a little bit more. I think DeAndre Swift is more of a liability than Cole Kmet. And what does Ben Johnson want to do? Build out his offense in his image. Okay, what's his offensive image? We've seen it in Detroit. Strengthen the offensive line. Well, this offseason, they already brought in 3 new offensive linemen. Their interior offensive line is brand new veterans that know how to play. Their tackles are young guys that have already been drafted. The offensive line, it's done. I mean, it is what it is for 2025. We'll see if improvements are needed. You got the quarterback in Caleb Williams, DJ Moore, Rome Odunze. You got your 2 wide receivers. You got Cole Kmet, who I think is a fine young tight end. Your running back, DeAndre Swift, is he good enough? Well, Ben Johnson's already told us he didn't think so. That's where he drafted Jahmyr Gibbs and then moved off of Swift. Omarion Hampton, I think, could be a 3-down back in the NFL. I love him in the receiving game. I think he's a patient runner. I think his contact balance is great. He reminds me of Le'Veon Bell. I think at pick 10, some people are going to say it's a reach. I think it's a fine spot. The San Francisco 49ers on the clock, they could use a Walter Nolan. They could use a Mike Green, but I've pretty consistently had them taking Jahdae Barron, and I'm not going to switch up there. I think Jahdae Barron is the pick because San Francisco needs so much on defense that I think early on you just take best available talent, and I think that is Jahdae Barron. I'm very high on Jahdae Barron. I understand this, and maybe the 49ers are, maybe they aren't, but this guy could play outside corner. This guy could play nickel. This guy could play safety. You could play this guy in all 3 spots in the secondary. And I think a player with that skill set, that versatility, and his ceiling, I think he could be a Trent McDuffie-esque player at the nickel. You take that guy at pick 11. The Dallas Cowboys on the clock at pick 12. I think that they are the most heavily favored team to draft wide receiver in this draft. It makes a ton of sense, especially if Hampton goes at pick 10. I think they have to go offense. And Matthew Golden. No Tet McMillan available. Back-to-back Texas picks. Jahdae Barron and Matthew Golden there. And listen, Matthew Golden, I think, is a really good fit next to CeeDee Lamb. And, Matthew Golden, for me personally, I'm lower on him than consensus, but I think the fit here in Dallas makes a ton of sense. Next to CeeDee Lamb, what do you want? A field stretcher. And Matthew Golden, I think, is the best field stretcher in the draft. He's got really high level speed, great deep route running. He's actually got some pretty solid hands as well. Matthew Golden to the Dallas Cowboys. They're Brandon Cooks' replacement. The guy plays a lot like Brandon Cooks, but he's younger and he's better at this point in time. Felt like a no-brainer pick. The Miami Dolphins, we've heard the reports that they're going to trade Jalen Ramsey. I don't know if that happens during the draft. I don't know if it happens within the next few days. I'm recording this Monday morning. But either way, I have them taking Will Johnson, the cornerback out of Michigan. They just need a true outside corner. And people say Teron Armstead retired. They got to go offensive tackle. The Paul that they drafted in the 2nd round, I think they're fine giving the keys to him. I think that they got to go corner. They got to replace Ramsey. The D-line, I think, is okay until later in the draft. The offensive line, you could draft later in the draft. You need a corner. Jahdae Barron gone. Will Johnson, what we saw in 2023 from Will Johnson would have had him as a top 10 pick in the draft. Kind of regressed a little bit this past year. Was that him? Was that Michigan's defense? Was it a little bit of both? I don't know. But Will Johnson to Miami, I think they're willing to take the shot and see what they got. The Indianapolis Colts, if Tyler Warren's on the board, I think that they're going to run that pick in, and it makes a ton of sense, right? Shane Steichen gonna have a field day with Tyler Warren. You could do a lot with him. He is the most versatile potentially player in the draft, but certainly the most versatile tight end in the draft. You could line him up in the Wildcat. He could actually throw the ball pretty decent if you need him to. He could run the ball decent. And of course, he's a great tight end. He is a big body, really solid in the blocking game as well. You got to have him out there for run blocking. And he is a weapon over the middle of the field that the Indianapolis Colts desperately, desperately need. And you start to see the way that this offense is shaping out. Michael Pittman, Adonai Mitchell as your outside wide receivers. Alec Pierce as well. You have Josh Downs as your slot guy. Tyler Warren as your tight end. Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. If Anthony Richardson can pan out, great. But if not, Tyler Warren's going to be a great weapon for whoever the QB of the Colts is. And now we get up to the Falcons pick, and the Falcons fans would be probably pissed at me if Mike Green wasn't the pick. And Mike Green will be the pick. You could go Jalen Walker. I prefer Mike Green. So if there's a Falcons fan yelling at me right now that it should have been Jalen Walker, so be it. But I got Mike Green here. I have him ranked higher personally. Maybe that's a spicy take. Maybe it's not. But the way he just was absolutely dominating at the senior day showed me everything I needed to see. Give me Mike Green to Atlanta. Either way, that is a team that absolutely needs to take an edge rusher. And I think that they will take Mike Green. I got Walter Nolan to the Arizona Cardinals. Real explosive out of the defensive interior defensive line spot. Great athleticism. I think a guy who could really disrupt what Matthew Stafford, what Brock Purdy, what Sam Darnold are doing. Those are not the most mobile quarterbacks. I mean, Purdy's got some mobility to him, but you won't talk about a guy who could explode through the middle of the defensive line. That's Walter Nolan, and he could really make an impact in a big, big way. Up next, we got the Cincinnati Bengals. And listen, the way that the draft fell, Jalen Walker's on the board, and I think they take a shot on him. I think Jalen Walker, you could play both at linebacker and at edge. And I think Cincinnati needs as much on the defensive side of the ball as they could get. And this is a guy who you could play in both spots. I highly considered Walker, and I highly considered Jahad Campbell. And either way, I think Cincinnati would be in a great spot, but I have them taking Jalen Walker in this specific spot. Next, we got the Seattle Seahawks, Gray Zabel. I think they have to go Gray Zabel. That is probably my most popular pick, and with good reason. They desperately need an interior offensive line. If Sam Darnold's going to be successful in Seattle, they need an interior offensive line. And Gray Zabel could play center, and he could play both guards. Gives you a lot of flexibility. Two of their first three picks, in my opinion, need to be interior offensive line. And the way that this has fallen for Tampa Bay is beautiful. Jahad Campbell's on the board, and he is going to be their next Levante David. They are going to go from one Pro Bowl, all-pro level linebacker to, in my estimation, another one. This is a smash, easy, fantastic pick. They'll worry about edge later. They brought in Hassan Reddick on that one-year deal as a stopgap player. And if Jahad Campbell wasn't on the board, they're probably taking an Ezeraku. They're probably taking a James Pierce. But in this situation with Jahad Campbell on the board, I just simply cannot pass him up. This is an interesting spot. We get to the Denver Broncos here. And I think that they certainly consider Colston Loveland. But something about them giving that contract to Evan Ingram makes me think that they're more comfortable waiting on tight end. Omarion Hampton gone. I don't think that, could this team potentially reach on a, Travion Henderson? Maybe. It's not something I'd be uber surprised by. But I've mocked it a couple times now. It makes a lot of sense to me. Emeka Egbuka to the Denver Broncos. Your outside wide receivers, who are they? Cortland Sutton, Marvin Mims. Evan Ingram as your tight end, Egbuka as your slot wide receiver. It is a pretty deep running back class to get one in the second round. I don't think there is wide receiver talent at the level of Ibuka in the second round. To be fair, I don't think there's running back talent of Travion Henderson, but I think there's more running back talent than wide receiver talent in this draft. You take Emeka Ibuka and you do not look back. Pittsburgh here, it feels like they have to go quarterback. I mean, the only guy on the roster right now is Mason Rudolph. Jalen Milroe or Jackson Dart. This is a battle that I've been having and who I think Pittsburgh is going to take. I would take Jackson Dart, personally. The stories that I've heard out of Pittsburgh, some of them scream Jalen Milroe to me. They had Mike Tomlin go have a dinner with him. It went great. They've been playing Lamar Jackson twice a year for, X amount of years, and they've seen what a guy like him can do. I'm still going Dart. I'm still going Dart to Pittsburgh. I wouldn't be shocked if it's Milroe, but here's my logic on Dart. One, I think he's just the better prospect. And at pick 21 in the draft where, you're trying to be predictive, sometimes you have to just kind of go off of who you think is better. But two, Pittsburgh's offense, what do they want to do? They want to run the ball and they want to throw it deep. You have DK Metcalf and George Pickens and Calvin Austin. This team clearly wants to chuck that ball down the field. Jackson Dart, in my estimation, the strongest arm in this draft. What did they do at Ole Miss a ton? He threw that ball deep. He's got some intangibles to work out, some IQ things to work out. I actually think Dart behind Rodgers for a year, not a bad plan. I know Pittsburgh's fans are going to be pissed if they bring in Aaron Rodgers. I think it could be good for Dart to sit 1 year. Personally, if it was up to me, Jackson Dart would be redshirted a year. I just don't think you could afford to do that behind a Mason Rudolph. But Jackson Dart, strong arm, decent mobility, great size. I think he fits in Pittsburgh. The Los Angeles Chargers. The wide receivers that are now available just don't scream Chargers to me. Luther Burden, I wouldn't, Jaden Higgins, Kyle Williams, Trey Harris, Jalen Noel. Too many of these guys are too much similar to Ladd McConkey. If a Golden or a Tet McMillan fell here, fine. It feels like a reach to go Trey Harris at this point in time. Colston Loveland, a name that I think that they really got to consider, because when you look at the weapons on the Chargers, and I think their playoff game versus Houston really painted this picture of it's kind of just Ladd McConkey that could perform in these games, and that's not going to be enough. And it wasn't enough, despite Ladd having a monster day. But is this a pick that Jim Harbaugh would make? Is Jim Harbaugh going to go offensive skill position player in the first round? I don't think so. I think Kenneth Grant's the pick. I think another Michigan alum, but I think the team lost Poona Ford. You need some run stuffers. Kenneth Grant absolutely fills that hole. They like to go light in the box. Kenneth Grant allows that to happen. The Green Bay Packers, a team that never goes wide receiver in the first round. If Matthew Golden was here, again, they could use a field stretcher. I think Luther Burden, also a name to consider, reminds me a little bit too much of Jaden Reed. Just a little bit too much of Jaden Reed, which I think brings us to the conversation of edge rusher / linebacker in this spot. And I think there's a lot to choose from. I think they're at the beginning of the run. I think that there's a run that kind of happens pick 27 through 30, and Green Bay kind of gets the first pick here at pick 23. And I think Ezeraku is a solid player, but I don't think he quite has the size that Green Bay looks for. And I think in this spot with a lot of different edge rushers here, Green Bay takes the lotto ticket. I think they go Shamar Stewart. I think Shamar Stewart has the highest ceiling of any edge rusher in the draft. You got to get him there. But I think when you're up, if you're Green Bay, you gotta take the shot. And I think that they absolutely take the shot on Shamar Stewart. Minnesota, they're one of the easier picks in the draft. I think they're a prime trade back team because they don't really have a lot of picks next year, if I'm not mistaken. But Malachi Starks, if he's on the board, they need a safety. Feels like the pick. Houston Texans. You know, if Egbuka was on the board, I think they should have a conversation. But Daniel Jeremiah said on Mina Kimes' show today that he was told by someone, if Kelvin Banks Jr. is on the board, Houston will be picking him. So I'm going to trust Daniel Jeremiah. If Kelvin Banks Jr. is on the board, which he was for me, Houston's picking him. I think it makes a ton of sense. He can play guard. He can play tackle. Houston needs help all across the offensive line. They've made some moves, but Kelvin Banks Jr., a guy that you could just see where he's best at, see what's up with your offensive line, and kind of play him there. The Los Angeles Rams are on the clock. I think they go Colston Loveland. I think that the Rams, Higbee, it might be time to move on from him. The Rams window is now. And I think that this is a kind of let's push our chips in move. And Loveland has a real special ability here. Tight end is a fairly decent need. They could go tackle for sure. I wouldn't be shocked if we saw them take Connerly out of Oregon. But I think Loveland here to pair with Devontae Adams, Puka Nacua, Tutu Atwell, Kyron Williams, for that offensive core for Stafford. Show Stafford you're all in on this window with him and you're ready to roll. Next, we got the Baltimore Ravens on the clock. They could go edge rusher here. I wouldn't be shocked if they took an Ezeraku, a James Pierce here. Absolutely, it wouldn't surprise me. I'm actually going to have this team go Tyler Booker, the guard out of Alabama. I think he produces immediately. The team could use a guard. He's an absolute big body and will help them out tremendously in the run game. And they were already the #1 rushing offense last year. So the rich get richer in some sense of the word with the Baltimore Ravens. Then we have the Detroit Lions. If they don't go edge, and I don't pick an edge for them, Lions fans are going to be absolutely pissed at me. It's just a matter of who do you take. I think Ezeraku is my highest graded edge rusher on the board, so that's where I'm going for Detroit. They take Ezeraku, and again, I think there's an edge rusher run here. I think now Washington, they need an edge. They're going to go James Pierce Jr., my next highest graded edge on the board. And James Pierce is more of a pure pass rusher than Ezeraku. I think Ezeraku is a more solid edge rusher who can rush the passer and is a little bit better in the run game, which, you know, fits well next to Aiden Hutchinson, whereas James Pierce Jr. is more of a, hey, let me pin my ears back guy and go after the quarterback. And I think that that fits what Washington needs. And then the Buffalo Bills are up, and I think that they take Nick Scorton, who is, again, more of a Ezeraku-esque edge rusher where, hey, this guy, he'll be fine in the run game. And, you know, Daniel Jeremiah also said this, which I thought was funny. The Chiefs' approach that he thinks is bat, best available tackle. And I think that that makes a ton of sense. I also think it's possible that the Chiefs sneaky go Travion Henderson, excuse me. Are they in on Pacheco? I don't know. They re-signed Kareem Hunt. It seemed like in the playoffs they were giving the ball to Hunt more than Pacheco. Is he still recovering from that injury? Travion Henderson is an absolute explosive play waiting to happen. I'm not going to predict it, but I think it's something to keep an eye on. I do think that this team goes tackle. You could make the case for Josh Connerly, but I think with what Josh Simmons could be, Kansas City's the perfect team to take the risk, because at the end of the day, at pick 31, they might leave with the best tackle in the entire draft. And then that brings up the Philadelphia Eagles. Could they go Luther Burden to be their wide receiver 3? I think they could. Could they be going Benjamin Morrison at corner? I think it's absolutely a possibility. Same with Trey Amos. Obviously, the Eagles love their edge rushers. They love Georgia. Mykel Williams could pretty easily be the pick here, and I wouldn't be surprised at all. But I think ultimately that this team is going to, let me get rid of the edge rushers here. I think ultimately the team goes Nick Manawari, the safety out of South Carolina. I think he's a ball hawk-esque player. They need a safety with CJ Gardner-Johnson gone. And I think Manawari is the best available safety on the board. I could see them waiting. I could see them going Mykel Williams and then drafting a safety in the second round, but I'll have them take Manawari here. So This is the draft, guys, my final predictive mock draft of the year. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section, as always, below. I appreciate your guys' support. If you love the NFL and you're not already subscribed to the channel, make sure you hit that button. If you made it this far in the video and you haven't hit the like button, do that for me. It's good for the algorithm. Comment your takes down below. Also good for the algorithm. And I will catch you guys Wednesday with the final video rankings in my series that I did with Steve Bradshaw from Dynasty Trading Room, where we rank our top 8 wide receivers in the NFL draft. You won't want to miss that. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.